For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life.
Your key to financial opportunity.
Mr. Springstead, Your Honor, before the jury comes in, it is my understanding that the court is entertaining the thought of maybe changing the lunch break slightly, maybe to extend an additional 30 minutes? The court, that would be fine, Mr. Springstead. That's great, Your Honor. The court, return the jury, whereupon the bailiff returns the jury to the courtroom. The court, a couple of little procedural matters, ladies and gentlemen. One of the jurors has asked the bailiff if the seats are adjustable. I don't believe they are. The clerk, we have a little footstool if somebody's feet are dangling, whereupon Guy Howie returns to the witness stand where he is sworn in by the clerk. Mr. Gill, so you were one of the officers that drives around in a marked car at that time. That's correct. Directing your attention to the early morning hours of February 8, 1985, did you have a call to be sent by your communications department to the Tenneco station on Highway 200 near I-75? Yes, I was. Approximately what time did you receive the call? 1:53 in the morning. And what was the nature of that call? An armed robbery. Was it a warm or a cool day? Cool. Where were you when you received the call that there had been a robbery? I was right here at Rayco 200. There's a truck stop restaurant here that was in business at the time, which is no longer in business. What were you doing there, sir? I was looking for a white female that had left a vehicle on I-75, allegedly looking for gas. And why were you looking for her? Officer Stewart had a DUI stop on the interstate at approximately, back over in here, as he indicates on the map. And you were in this area on the same side of the road as the Tenneco looking for a white female. That's correct. That you thought was on the road. Did you see any cars or anything go by with people in them that drew your attention? From the time I got the call, no sir, I did not see any cars traveling westbound. Now, you said within a matter of a minute or so you were there. Yes sir. How did you get there? I traveled from Rayco 200 eastbound in the westbound lanes of State 200 to the Tenneco station. And approximately how long were you here at the Rayco 200 prior to receiving the call? 2 or 3 minutes at the most. I had just gotten there. So in that period of time, in the period you came down to the Tenneco, did you see any other cars go by? No, sir. I could not observe State Road 200, but you did not pass any cars as you were going, the wrong way on this road? Correct. That's why I drove down the wrong way. That's all the questions I have. The court. Defense may proceed. Mr. Springstead. Yes, just a couple of questions if I may, Your Honor. Officer Howie, you were looking for a white female, is that correct? That's correct. Your Honor, if the witness can step down. The court. Yes. Mr. Springfield. I have to use my hands to talk. I wouldn't be able to speak without them, so I don't want to hold the diagram. This diagram doesn't show the Rayco 200, does it? No, sir. Is there an ink pencil or something that we can use to write on it? Mr. Gill. Jack, I will hold it for you for the jury to see. Mr. Springstead. I appreciate that. Officer Howie, will you please draw the Rayco 200 in as best as you can, the location of that? If you'll excuse my drawing, that's fine. There are gas islands out there this way for the semi-tractor trailers, and then up front there are gas islands for motor vehicles. There's a motel office type area somewhat in the configuration of this nature. As a matter of fact, there might even be a breezeway through here or a break. Now, you indicated that you were looking for a white female. That's correct. And you went around the building to the Rayco 200, and in fact, you were behind it when you got the call. That's correct. And you were looking, I assume, along the building in the dark. No, sir, it's lit up, this entire area. It was open at the time? Yes, except for the parking area. Did you check anywhere over here in the parking area for her? No, sir. I went around to the front first and checked up front, and I drove around to the back, and I had not gotten back to the semi-tractor trailers because the call went out. So you were behind the Rayco station for a period of time? Yes, sir. Who did you speak with on the dispatch? Do you recall? The dispatcher's name? Right. I believe it was Mindy Thomas. And she called in to you? No, sir. What did she do? She hit the alert tone and then just said, using the police signals, that there was an armed robbery at the Tenneco station. So when you got the call, you were in fact behind Rayco. That's right. How did you pull into Rayco? There's an opening here. I came in this way. Okay, and you pulled in facing Rayco? Yes, sir. Did you look around the front of the building first? Yes, sir. So you were looking all along the front of this building for someone. This is a restaurant, and then there's a bar here, and then there's like a restaurant, and you have bathrooms back in this area and bathrooms back in here. Did you look inside the store for this lady? No, sir. I just pulled back there and I was going to go inside. Did you look around the restroom area? No, sir. I never got out of my patrol vehicle. So you were still in your car behind the store? Correct. All right, if I could just have a moment with counsel, Your Honor. Never mind. No further questions, Your Honor. 1:54 a.m. Ocala Police Officer Howie Guy arrives on the scene. Immediately, he observes 3 people inside the store in a blue Chevy van parked on the east side of the building. Upon seeing the squad car, the 3 exit the station and inform Officer Guy that the clerk is dead. Officer Guy orders the 3 to remain by the van until other officers have arrived. Officer Guy enters the station through the east door and observes a 6-pack of Stroh Light beer lying broken on the floor, and the 3rd cooler door from the east standing open 6 inches. A broom standing against the wall, a dustpan, a display rack knocked away from the counter, a package of bubble yum chewing gum on the counter, an elderly white male victim dressed in a pair of trousers, a dark blue sweater over a checkered shirt, lying on the floor with his back against the south cabinets, and a bullet hole in the left cheek under his eye. Seiko watch on his wrist, his hat and eyeglasses on the floor beside him, a pair of shattered dentures that had been forcefully expelled from his mouth, denture adhesive splattered with high velocity on the east cabinet door, the cash register drawer open, and all the paper money missing. The officer goes around the counter and checks if the victim is alive. Meanwhile, he observes a bullet hole under the left ear as well, a bullet hole in the cabinet door, and a bullet lodged in a cabinet door. After being unable to locate any sign of life from the victim, the officer goes back outside to contain the 3 witnesses. And Officer Pasture, who has just arrived, transport them to the police department to be later interviewed. 2:02 a.m. The Ocala Fire Rescue and Monroe medical paramedics arrive on scene, and an examination determines that the victim is indeed unable to be treated. 2:03 a.m. Officer Guy secures the scene and makes a request for Field Evidence Officer Sergeant Hall, who arrives immediately. 2:07 a.m. Officer Guy notifies Commander Bovaird. 2:10 a.m. Officer Guy notifies the medical examiner's office, and Guy, with the assistance of Corporal Stevenson, Officer Joe Brown, and Officer Pat Dincola, conduct a search of the area and locate fresh footprints in the field north of the store and fresh tire marks to the east of the store. The officers secure those areas with plastic. Officer Guy returns to the station and observes that 73 cents has been rung up on the cash register, the exact amount for 1 package of bubblegum. The control box for the gas indicates that the last gas purchase was on pump number 5 for $5.02 of regular gas. 2:40 a.m. Mr. Keith Gower of the medical examiner's office arrives and enters the crime scene to conduct his part of the investigation. 2:45 a.m. Sergeant Kretmeyer and Investigator H.L. Leary arrive at the scene and are briefed as to the progress of the investigation. Meanwhile, Officer Guy begins interviewing Mr. Randy Holes, store manager, and Mr. Ralph Cohen, district manager for Tenneco, and Mr. Cohen identifies the victim at the scene as Mr. Merle Chet Reeder. 3:05 a.m. Investigator Leary enters the station and, while taking a good look at Chet, discovers an additional bullet wound in his torso. He takes note of the dollar bill clutched in his hand, the package of gum lying on the counter, and the change remaining in the cash drawer. He steps over one of the bottles from the 6-pack and is informed that 2 of the witnesses who discovered the body are now at the station awaiting to be interviewed. He requests 35mm photographs to be taken of the scene inside and out, and a plaster impression be taken of the several footprints on the north side of the station. He also requests impressions be made of the tire tread marks on the outside of the station near the side street. At this time, he and Sergeant Kretmeyer depart the station and return to the police department to meet with and interview the witnesses who had discovered Chet's body. The officers now discover that the two witnesses had left the scene and returned to Butterfields, their place of employment, where they had called 911, before returning to the scene where the officers had first encountered them. 4:05 a.m. Investigating Officer Kretmeyer interviews Luke Borges. Mr. Borges, I understand that you went to the Tinoco station tonight and that you found a man had been shot. Is that correct? Yes, sir, it is. Okay, would you tell me the circumstances by which you came to the Tinoco? Okay, I work at Butterfields across the street, and we were stopping there. We were going to get a packet of gum, and my friend was probably fixing to get a pack of cigarettes. He came out to the van, which I was seated in, and he went in first and came out and told me with a very white face that there was a man in there that was dead, and he was stuttering, and I believed him right off the bat, just by the look on his face. I ran in there to check it out myself, and the man was in the position I described to you. There was a six-pack on the floor broken. He had money, I believe, in his right hand, and the change drawer was open, and the plastic insert was pulled out, and there was no money in the register. The man was shot in the face. I ran back out to the truck, and we left, and I didn't want to use the phone. I didn't know if the person might still be in the direct area, so I left in a hurry, and we punched straight across the street to Butterfield's parking lot. Went in there, and my buddy called, I guess it was 911, the proper authorities, and told them what happened, and I got the keys to the van. We went back over to the scene at the time, and we found the police had just arrived, and I checked the man's pulse and verified, confirmed. As far as I could tell, for 20 seconds I felt no pulse. I assumed the man was dead. Okay, when you went over to the station, you saw no one around there, is that right? When I went back over the second time or the first time? The first time. First time while I was sitting in the van, I saw no one around that I took any note of at all. The only thing it was like every other night I go over there. Every night. I see the man, it was like every other night. It was normal. When my friend came back out and told me, I knew he wasn't lying to me. I ran back in to check it out, and I looked around toward the rear of the building to see if I saw anybody as I was entering the place, and looked around the front, and I didn't see anybody. I couldn't see anybody there. And when I was coming out, I was a little hysterical. I didn't know what we should do first. I was worried about a man that might still be around, or I did see like a person walking in front of the place heading east on 200. It looked like a lady. I couldn't tell you what her hair was like or any description. She had blondish hair and was wearing kind of a sweater, like a dark sweater, and she wasn't even looking in our direction. She wasn't even looking in the direction of the place. I started hollering and that we had to make a phone call, and I didn't want to go do it. I didn't want to do it there. And that was the time we left and went across the street to make the phone call. Okay, this woman that was walking on 200, was she in the parking lot of the station? Yeah, the sidewalk. No, she was on the sidewalk, right directly off of 200 heading east, like, just walking along the sidewalk. Okay. Now, when I walked in the store, I checked my watch. Okay, Steve told me what had happened, and I figured it was time to check my watch as I walked in the door, and it was exactly 10 minutes till 2. Okay, I got the exact time when I walked in. Okay, when you went over to the station, who else? He went in first. Okay, and his name is what? Christopher Gulick. Christopher Gulick? Gulick is his name. It's hard. It's a hard one. Okay, all right. He went in and he came out and told you this, and that a man had been shot. Is that right? And you went in. Did you check his pulse after you went back the second time? I come back the second time, and the police were there. Right. Okay. What was the reason? The reason I didn't stay the first time is because I was really under the impression that somebody was right there. I mean, I didn't see anybody or anything. Did you notice any cars parked anywhere around the place? No, it was fairly empty all around. There was nobody else there at the station for sure. I could sure say. Okay, there was no one else, just yourself and Christopher Gulick. Christopher. There was a third man down here at the station with you tonight that has left now, is that right? At the station? No, there was a girl. At the police station? Here? Yes. That was a girl. Okay, well, what's her involvement with this? Well, I don't know exactly. I didn't see her. From what I gathered, I don't know. She saw a blue van, which is what we were driving. Said she saw us leave and take off, which is what we did. We took off, went across the street. Now, I don't know if she was there before or after us, but I would assume it was after us. Now, I don't know whether she walked or checked the man or not, but she was crying, so I assume that she knows what happened to the man. All right, you say you go in the station often or every night? Regular. You know the different people that work there, or do you know just the night shift people? Yeah, I mean, I've seen them. I know all their faces, I'm sure of that. I live there on 200, not so far down the road. Okay, at night like this, do you normally go in about the same time of the night? Yeah, right around 2 or pretty close there? Uh-huh. Is there one person working there or more than one? There's usually always one person, and it's usually that elderly man with the beard. I've seen him there. I've spoken with him, had a conversation with the man a number of times. So, have you ever seen anyone sweeping the parking lot of that station? Sweeping? Sweeping the parking lot, yeah. You mean cleaning it? Cleaning around the gas pumps. Have you ever seen him do it or anyone do it at night? No, not that I can recollect. Alright, very good. That's all I can think of to ask you right now. Is there anything else that I haven't talked about that you can recall that might be important? No, other than my impression of it was I walked in, surveyed what I saw. I saw the broken six-pack on the floor in front of the beer cooler as I walked in, and the first thing I saw was, I went over to the counter, I looked over and I saw the man there, and I believe it was his hand. I believe it was $3. I didn't check, but he had money in his right hand, as if he were collecting it. It seemed to me like the man waited till the drawer was open, cash drawer, like he might have purchased the six-pack just to get the man to open the drawer and dropped it on the way out. That was my impression of it. At a glance, the more I think about it, the more I think that this could be what happened. From I suppose he was shot on the left side. Maybe the man had a gun in his right hand. Okay, now this is a self-service station, right? All the pumps are self-service. The pumps are self-service, Okay, you say he had about $3 in his hand? Yeah, best I can recall. Best you can recall? Are you sure if it was $3 or you think it was $3? Well, $3 stands out in my mind. Okay. I'm almost positive it was something to that effect, $3. It was singles. I saw singles. Okay, which door did you go into this building by? Okay, Highway 200 roads, east-west, looking out the store. I walked in from the west entrance. We were parked facing Highway 200. In other words, we pulled in from the east end, went around the station, and set ourselves to the right of the pumps that they're facing west. Okay, and we walked, and he walked in the store and came back out, and I walked in the store, so we used the west entrance. You went through the door that's closest to I-75. Right. Okay, is that the door you went in the second time when you came back? No, I went in the other door when we pulled back in the second time. But now there was already a policeman on the scene there at that time. There was a man, there was a boy, went in with me from the place that I've used the phone at. I was pretty hysterical when I went in and asked him to drive me over, and I don't know what he messed with or anything. I told him, he started to reach for the phone. I told him to leave everything alone to get away from it, and the only thing I did was check the man's pulse. Okay. Yeah, I tried to find a pulse. Was the man that went back with you the second time? Okay, there were two of them. One of them works with me. His name is Robbie, and the other man, I don't know. I'm sure if he was a customer at the restaurant or exactly. He was at the restaurant when we went there to make the phone call. All right. Did Chris Gulick go back with you the second time after you had gone over and made the phone call? He wasn't in the van. He ran across the street first because I told him that the man might still, I told him to go check the pulse. Okay. Like what he didn't, from what he told me, he just he couldn't bring himself to do it. I went and did the second time I got there. Okay, and the guy named Robbie who works with you. You don't know his last name? No, I sure don't offhand. And some customer whose name you don't know also went back with you. Yeah, but I can describe the customer. He had a white shirt like you have on, long sleeve dinner shirt with some slacks. I had seen him there earlier when I was at work. Okay, all right. Time is now 4:16. End of interview. At 04:20 hours. Mr. Gulick, can you spell your last name, please? Gulick. Alright, we understand that you were at the Tinaco station tonight and found a man that had been shot. Is that right? Yes, sir. Would you tell us from the beginning what happened? Okay, we came from Papa's and I was driving my van going back to the place that we work, Butterfields, and I wanted to stop and get a pack of cigarettes first. So I was riding across the street. I pulled in. I didn't see any cars getting gas or nobody was there or anything. So I pulled up. I didn't have no suspicion of anything. And then I walked in. I opened the door and I walked in and I seen a case of Stroh's Light and the bottle was on the floor, smashed and busted. So I says, somebody throwed a six-pack here, and I heard no answer. So I went up to the counter, said hello. I waited. I said hello, no answer. So I looked there at the counter and I seen a man laying on the floor. I didn't know what to do, so I turned around and I got back in the van and I told Luke that we were going to go across the street and call. So he wanted to find out what was going on, and I told him to stay in the van, but he got out and he peeped in the window and he freaked out. Got back in the van, and then we left, went across the street to Butterfields and made the phone call. And then they told me to go back over, and I ran back over, and alright. You saw no one at the Tenneco station when you arrived first time. You saw no cars parked anywhere around them. See, I didn't know if I didn't know if they were in the bathroom. They wanted to come get me, so I split. I took off. Okay, after you made this phone call, you went back to the gas station? Yeah. What did you do when you got back? They told me to go back, and by the time I got there, the cop car was pulling in, so we all stood around. A bunch of people gathered around, and he said, who are you two people that called? He said, who are the two people that called and witnessed it or found this body? And I raised my hand and said, me and Luke. And he goes, okay, everybody leave, and everybody else left, and he told me and Luke to get in the cop car, and we come downtown, so here we are. All right. Luke told me that after you went back over to make the phone call to the police, that you ran back over across the street to the place, and he drove back with a guy named Robbie. And do you know what Robbie's last name is? Lord, Lord, and he works at Butterfield's. He's my supervisor. Okay, and there was also a customer that, according to Luke, that drove back over with them. I don't recall. I took it on foot. Okay, you don't recall seeing the customer, or you don't know who he was? No, there was a bunch of people who gathered around. Who went in the store there? Was there somebody in the store when you got back there from making the phone call? Yeah, there was a cop in there, and he was taking the pulse on the guy. When you got back in the store, did you see any of the other customers in the store? Do you often go to the Tenneco station, or have you been there before? Every night? About what time of night do you go? Get gas, usually 3:30, and it's either getting gas or cigarettes or something. Okay, every night. About what time was it tonight when you went over and found the body? About 1:45, 10 to 2? Okay, have you seen the man that was shot working there before at the station? All the time. Do you know anybody else that works in that station? No, because the only time I go in there is in the hours of the night or in the morning. Okay, at that hour of the night or the morning, is there only one person working then? Just the old guy. And it's usually that same guy that is shot now? Have you ever seen him sweep the parking lot? No, he never comes outside. I had car trouble one night, and I asked him to pull his car around in front, if you mind jumping me off, but he wouldn't. He wouldn't even do that. Okay, he never leaves the inside, never. That's all the questions I have to ask you. Is there anything else that you can think of we haven't talked about that might be important? Yeah, why did that girlie leave? I don't know who. What's her name? Who is she? This piece of paper down here has her name on it. What is her involvement in this? Do you know? She said she was working along the street, and she stopped in and found him okay, and this and that, and after we found him, and I guess she tried to call, but we'd already called. Alright, when you went there the first time, you and Luke, did you happen to see anybody walking along 200? Luke said he thought he saw a person, but I guess it was that girl. And I was blown away. I was too blown away to even... Do you remember seeing anybody like that? No. Alright, the time is now 4:25. End of interview. "9 a.m. Officer William Fugit contacts the Assistant State Attorney Jim Phillips, referencing leaving the body at the crime scene until a laser processor arrives from Orange County, ETA being around noon. Phillips informs Officer Fugit he has no problem with leaving the body at the scene. 9:20 a.m. Officer Fugit contacts the medical examiner, Dr. Schutz, in Leesburg, and Schutz also informs Officer Fugit he has no problem with leaving the body at the scene, but that after the scene is laser processed, to turn the body over to be placed in a cooler, and that because it would be later in the day, that he would not be able to perform the autopsy until the following morning, February the 9th. 12:45 p.m. Forensic analyst John F. Fisher, Lieutenant James Murray, and Detective Harry Park arrive at the Tenneco station, and Corporal Stewart informs them of the circumstances surrounding the crime scene. The analyst examines the interior of the crime scene with an argon laser. Note: back in 1985, as there was no access to CCTV footage or DNA profiling, the main evidence investigators looked for were eyewitnesses, fingerprints, and weapons. And as such, any blood or bodily fluids would have usually been overlooked. Also, traditionally, crime scene technicians would have attempted to recreate bullet trajectories by either placing string or wooden dowels in any bullet holes. However, the string or dowel method cannot be used successfully with links longer than a few feet, and the Ocala Police Department had the progressive wherewithal to summon the use of new argon ion laser technology, a straight, non-bending column of visible light that can pinpoint the direct path of a bullet. and on February 8, 1985, the argon ion was used for the examination of evidentiary substances such as bodily fluids, fingerprint residues, and trace evidence such as fibers, which was, as mentioned, a very progressive move on behalf of Ocala investigators to see the value in blood and bodily fluids in an era before DNA was a functional forensic tool that it is today. Early afternoon. The scene is vacuumed in order to recover trace evidence, such as dust from the fingerprints that have been heavily taken, with several possible prints being developed. The push bar is also retrieved from the door and tagged as evidence for further processing at the OCSO crime lab. 5:40 p.m. The victim's body is identified as that of Merle Chet Reeder by his brother-in-law at the Monroe Memorial Regional Hospital morgue. 7:30 p.m. Analyst Fisher leaves the scene with the following. Exhibit 1. 1 cash tray. Exhibit 2. 1 dustpan. Exhibit 3. 1 push bar. Exhibit 4. 1 package of Bubble Yum bubblegum. And Exhibit 5. 1 business card with a bullet hole retrieved from the right breast shirt pocket of the victim. Based on all the evidence thus far gathered, Supervisor Corporal Stewart types up a narrative for the incident report. It is this writer's opinion that the incident occurred possibly as follows. 2 suspects entered the store, with one going to the front counter and one going to the beer cooler. The first suspect gave the victim a $1 bill to purchase a package of gum, which was left on the counter. The victim rang up the sale, and when the drawer of the cash register opened, the first suspect shot the victim in the lower left stomach. While the first was paying for the gum, the second suspect was removing a 6-pack of beer and was startled by the loud blast from the gun, or just dropped the beer on the floor and left the cooler door open. After the victim was shot, the victim bent at the waist, doubling over from the stomach wound, and the first suspect shot him again in the upper left chest, giving the projectile the downward flight path through the victim's body. The victim then fell to the floor against the cabinets and was shot by the first suspect a third time, on the left side of his face, the third bullet wound causing the victim's dentures to break. The first suspect then walked around to the side of the counter and shot the victim in the lower jaw and neck while he was still in the same position, causing the expulsion of the victim's dentures and the saliva-mixed adhesive. The suspect then removed the money from the cash drawer and fled. The projectile which entered the face of the victim passed through the victim and entered the cabinet door behind the victim. The projectile passed through the door and separated from the copper jacket, with the lead ending up in the sink and the jacket on the shelf. The projectile which passed through the victim's neck struck the east cabinet door, separating from the jacket. The lead then became lodged in the door, and the jacket fell to the floor under the victim. In the drawer next to the cash register was located a second cash drawer containing $139, which was not touched. The victim, identified as Merle Chet Reeder, had been killed for $52.78. I'm Cory Zimmerman, and this is Spoon River Gothic, Season 2. Death Rides the Highway, a thrill ride fueled by murder and terror. Think, feel, and understand the world around you with Spoon River Gothic Podcast, because we go where the others don't. We dive deeper. And if you want to plunge even deeper into our true crime tales, please subscribe to Spoon River Gothic Agency. That's SRG Agency at www.patreon.com/Spoon River Gothic Podcast, and access the Spoon River Gothic Podcast case file for bonus weekly episodes available on Spotify. And also included in the Patreon case file are investigative materials such as exclusive audio interviews, trial footage, police files, court documents, photos, diagrams, and more to accompany each Season 2 episode of Death Rides the Highway. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. It means more than you know in this cutthroat world. And until next time, work hard, party hard, keep a vigilant eye over your shoulder, and don't forget to watch each other's backs. This is a sideways world we are living in. And again, that's www.patreon.com/Spoon River Gothic Podcast. Subscribe now, because there's always more to the story.
Ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? More than you think. Your name, contact info, social security number, home address, and even information about your family members is all being compiled by data brokers and sold to the highest bidders online. That means anyone on the web, criminal or investigator, can get your private details, which, as true crime enthusiasts know all too well, increases your risk of identity theft, phishing scams, harassment, stalking, and unwanted phone calls. As a podcast that exists publicly and shares our opinions online, we are hyper aware of safety and security, and all this data being so easily searchable on the internet can have real-life consequences. This is why Spoon River Gothic is proud to partner with Delete Me, the #1 service in online data removal. Delete Me finds and removes any information you don't want online and makes sure it stays off. Their dedicated team finds and removes your personal info from the largest people search databases and helps prevent potential ID theft, doxing, stalking, and phishing scams in the process. That's why I personally recommend Delete Me for protecting yourself and your personal information. Sign up at joindeleteme.com/spoonriver and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts will take it from there. As part of their subscription service, you will even receive personalized privacy reports showing what they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. Their experts are always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want accessible online. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal info off the web and making your personal profile no longer anyone's to sell. So join us at deleteme.com/spoonriver because no one wants to be a victim nor a suspect. So get protected, and the next time a case hits too close to home, you won't find yourself asking the stranger on the other end of the phone, "How did you get my number?" Go to joindeleteme.com/spoonriver and get started today.
Death rides the highway.